We're all pissed at Senator Schumer. Senate Democrats completely sold out by simply refusing to fight. A couple weeks ago, I actually made this video where I talked about how Senate Dems were about to cave in order to save healthcare subsidies, but that was silly because politically speaking, that would actually help Donald Trump while not tackling any of the serious problems that have caused such political dysfunction right now in America. But instead, what Senate Democrats decided to do in the end was actually not even that. They're not even saving healthcare. They just did a shutdown for a while. They were winning. Democrats had this gigantic win last Tuesday. And then it appears that a lot of moderate Senate Democrats essentially decided to end the shutdown, I think partially because they were scared that Republicans were actually going to end the filibuster, which is the thing that Senate Democrats have used repeatedly as an excuse for inaction. And so they decided to not save healthcare, not address ICE in our streets, not address Trump abusing the tariff power. Instead, they're doing absolutely nothing. A couple of things we learned from this. First, these Senate Democrats are not ones that are up for election next cycle. And what this means is that there are actually more Senate Democrats than this who probably would have sold us out. And the ones that did were simply the ones who were not up for election. And for some reason, Chuck Schumer decided to stand with these people. I think the reason why, if I were to be charitable towards him, is that Chuck Schumer sees himself as kind of a moderate whisperer. I think he himself is fairly moderate on a lot of issues, but also keep in mind that when Biden was president, they did pass a number of fairly progressive bills, and he found a way to get Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema on board with that. So I think to him, his brand as a moderate is really important because it's what allows him, in his mind at least, to get things done working with moderate members of his party. Right now, though, this is not good enough. And it's not good enough for a very simple reason. We're going to have several election cycles in which Democrats absolutely crush it as long as things are fair. And Democrats want people who are going to fight for them. And right now, what Senate Democrats have shown is that basically none of them really can be trusted because, again, a certain number of Democrats sold us out here along with the majority leader. All these other Senate Democrats could just choose not to support him for at this point, he's the minority leader of the Senate. They could have chosen not to support him as minority leader, but they did support him, which means that they also are kind of by default not exactly trustworthy when it comes to actually fighting for us. And the other really important thing here is, again, why did they sell us out? It was to protect the filibuster. Because if they hadn't sold us out, Donald Trump was threatening to order Senate Republicans to take it away. And these moderates didn't want to get rid of the filibuster because for them, it's a very convenient excuse to not do things. At the end of the day, we just really need to essentially get rid of the entire Senate leadership. They are not people who are going to fight for us, but the good news is this is an opportunity because ordinary rank and file Democrats are pissed off right now. Just ordinary people are really upset that this just happened. And that means that we can run more progressive candidates and win. And I actually have a correction to issue about my last video where I talked about Katie Wilson probably losing in Seattle. I did say at the time that the votes have been counted, but right now she's behind. She might pull ahead, but it didn't seem that likely. But she actually did just barely pull ahead. The election is still fairly close, but it's looking very likely at this point that Katie Wilson actually will win. The more progressive candidate is winning in Seattle. And I mean, you look at Mamdani's win, you look at several other people's win, and they didn't really run, for the most part, as Democratic socialists. What they ran as is they ran on specific issues that people got excited about. And that's also true of Donald Trump, by the way. Donald Trump is super extreme in a lot of ways. And people talk about the fact that he was perceived as more moderate than Hillary Clinton. But it's not just broadly speaking because he moderated on immigration, which is more important to a lot of people. It's because the specific policy that people knew him as, build the wall, was something that was popular, that a lot of people agreed was important, even if they liked immigrants. And so because they just remembered him saying, build the wall, something concrete, something they could remember, they thought he was moderate. And when people came and said, oh, he's so extreme on immigration, in their minds, they're just like, well, I just know him as the build the wall guy. That's not extreme. The same was true of Mamdani. Mamdani did not really run as a democratic socialist or anything like that per se. He ran as a freeze the rent guy. And freeze the rent is something very concrete that would improve a lot of people's lives. It's very memorable, easy. And so when people come to you and they say, oh, he's a democratic socialist. Oh, he's gonna make us all eat halal food or whatever. They're just like, well, you're clearly just mad because he says freeze the rent, and I actually like that policy. So that's another key for us to learn is run on specific issues, talk to people. And one other thing that I want to mention here is that even in the case of Zoran Mamdani, it's worth noting again just what we are up against. Turnout was incredibly high. And when it was incredibly high because a lot of people did switch their votes from Democrats who probably had voted Democrat in the past to, in this case it was independent, but really Republican, Andrew Cuomo. But Mamdani got even more people excited. And this kind of proves actually the progressive thesis that you run candidates with exciting ideas and with charisma, and they're going to be able to overcome the vote switching tendency. Like, yes, some people will switch their votes, but if you have a lot of people in the streets talking to people, it's more important. In this election, at least, that was true. Like, yes, Matthew Iglesias, you're correct that people will switch their votes. But when you have turnouts which are extremely low, like you have in America, you actually really can overwhelm the people who are switching their votes from because your candidate is perceived as too extreme. That's what worked for Trump, and that's also what worked for Mamdani in opposite directions. So best of luck to us. Again, it was a big win on Tuesday. We have opportunities going forward. Right now, Senate Democrats suck, and we probably just need to vote them all out, frankly. At this point, even Bernie, he's just too old. We need a new Bernie. And the other thing, too, about having younger candidates is that they expect to be in office for longer, which means they want to take more progressive positions. Because if they're going to be in the Senate for 40 years, which they're all hoping to be in the Senate for 40 years, for that long, then they need to take positions now, which 40 years from now will have been seen as the correct choice. If you're 80 years old, you don't give a crap what people are going to think about you in 40 years. You're not even thinking about it. But if you're 40 years old, you might care. And so even if somebody's like a decent senator who's 75, 80 years old, we honestly should replace them with someone younger as long as we think we can still win that race, and we probably would be able to in all of these, simply because they're going to have more energy, they're going to have more time to actually build up a following and secure themselves in their states, and they're going to be taking more progressive positions because they want to be seen as on the right side of history.